Hi,
Good
Tony.
morning. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. Becca's here too.
Good morning.
Good morning. So Lisa, do you guys know each other?
Nope.
No? Okay. So trying to think. Lisa, did you ever meet April's friend Stacy that she used to work with at American Cancer Society?
It's very possible, but
Okay. So Stacy and Becca grew up together, and then Becca did April's hair for years and years as a hairdresser, and now she's a realtor with us.
awesome.
So she's trying to sit in on as many meetings and stuff that we do as possible, just to try to learn, all the ins and outs. So thanks for being cool with her being on.
Yeah, thanks for letting me join.
You bet.
Yeah, I figured if you have other questions, that'll just help me learn too. So might as well have more people at the table.
That's a good way to do it. So we'll start off with the stuff that was in your email. Your first question was, should we put this in LLC? And that one's a little tricky. So a lot of people recommend that you put all of your rental properties into their own LLC, just to keep legal separation. So what that should afford you is, if someone in your rental unit sues you, it should keep them from being able to come after your personal assets. Does that make sense? That being said, really good lawyers seem to be able to find ways to do what they call piercing the veil, okay, which is saying, hey, this LLC is not legit. You're not running it like a legit company. And so, they'll say, let me see your operating agreement. Let me see, the minutes from your annual meetings. And if you don't, a lot of people don't bother to do any of that stuff. And then the lawyer will say, well, this isn't a real LLC. This is just a shell. And then they'll get at your personal stuff anyway. So it's always recommended that that you have some pretty sizable umbrella insurance policies. I don't know if you have a personal umbrella currently.
Yeah, when you say sizable, like I have one up to $1 million right now. Like
sure.
what is sizable mean?
Yeah, I was going to suggest 1 to 2 million.
Okay.
Is going to cover you for most stuff. And if you do have an LLC, even if you have an LLC, I would recommend having one owned by the LLC for 1 or 2 million, just because umbrella insurance is relatively cheap. And I just actually learned that recently, that when I actually started my real estate business, I said, well, I've got a $1 million umbrella policy. I don't need insurance. My insurance guy's like, no, your business needs its own umbrella policy. So that's a good thing to note. So ideally, the easiest way, if you're going to put your new property in an LLC, would be to buy it in the LLC's name, which means the lender would be lending to your LLC, not to you personally. That's going to screw you up to try to do right now, because UW Credit Union is not a big commercial lender, so they're not gonna want to switch you over to an LLC, because it's going to start the whole process over. It's going to cost you more. They're going to give you a worse interest rate. Commercial loans are always a little bit higher because they're riskier. So what people do is they close in their personal name, and they do what's called a quit claim deed, QUIT claim deed. And that's basically how you transfer the deed from one person to another, or from one person to an entity, or one entity to another entity. So you can get a quick claim deed. I'm not sure if you have to have a lawyer draw it up, or if I could do that, or if you can just do it yourself. I'll have to look into that farther. I've actually never completed one, but basically you're transferring for $0 from your personal name into your LLC's name. And when you do that, you're going to have to pay a transfer tax, which equates to $3 per $1,000 of value. Okay.
You cut
So
off for me $3 per.
per $1,000.
Oh,
So if you pay 245, you're going to pay 245 times 3, which I think
right.
it's a little over $700. Okay. Now, technically, according to the letter of your contract with your bank mortgage, you can't do that. If you transfer it, they can call your note due. They can wreak some havoc with your loan. That being said, it happens all day, every day. People secure financing in their own personal name, and as soon as their loan's closed, they transfer it. They don't tell their bank. The bank never asks. As long as you don't start missing payments, no one's gonna be the wiser at the bank. So technically, 100% legally, you'd want to do it all in your LLC, and not switch it afterwards. But it happens every day, and like I said, unless you stop paying your mortgage, they're never even going to know that you did it, unless you go to refinance, in which case they'd make you refinance into a commercial loan, or you could actually transfer it back to your personal name prior to starting that process, and then go forward with the personal loan.
Tony,
So
that's called the due on sale clause, right? For lending?
yeah, yep, due on sale. So even though you're transferring it for no money, that's technically selling the building. Okay.
Gotcha. So,
So
yeah,
so
I mean,
the
I don't
benefit.
anticipate we'll do
Go
any
ahead.
refinancing with the interest rates are so flipping low, right?
Right. Yeah,
So-
you're probably not going to refinance.
So since this is our only property or rental property at the moment, right? Like, does it make sense to still like go the LLC route and go through this process after the purchase? Or do you know what I'm saying? Like, or does it
Yeah.
make sense because it's only one property to hold off until we start building that?
Well, assuming you're going to try to buy more, right?
Yes, not probably within, we're thinking the first year, we just really want to figure this out, right?
Yep.
But then after that, we're probably gonna start looking for more.
Okay. So to give you an example, the only rental properties I still own are my duplex, and then I got a big commercial building down in Stoughton. When we had the bar, that was in a separate LLC. A separate LLC owned the real estate, and then a separate LLC owned the bar business. And so the building in Stoughton is under an LLC. The building, my duplex over in Windsor, is still in my name. I formed an LLC called Windsor Duplex LLC, and never took the time to do the quick claim deed and transfer it. And that's partially because I've gotten mixed answers every time I've asked someone I would consider to be an expert. I've gotten a different answer on how important it is. So it's really up to you. So I still own my duplex. I have that umbrella policy personally. I think $1 million. I've been lucky so far. I haven't had anybody there try to sue me for anything, but that's not to say that they couldn't. And then they could come after my house. But like I said, even if you have an LLC, if you're not following that exactly to the letter, a lot of times a lawyer will get around that and try to get at your stuff anyway. But you can always just be very diligent about making sure your LLC is proper. And so technically the LLC should limit your personal liability. Like I said, keeping each property you own in a separate LLC also separates them the same way. So if something happens at one of them, they can't come after your other rental units. I'm not 100%, I'm not an accountant, but I'm told there's tax benefits to holding it in an LLC, where you can avoid some taxes. And it's easier, makes it easier to separate your expenses. Like I've got separate checking accounts for all of my LLCs. So like if I have to go put a washer and dryer in, or if I've got to put a new window in, everything operates out of that separate business checking. And then accounting wise, I'm not trying to separate expenses at the end of the year. Another thing you didn't hear from me is one of the very tax savvy ways of having rental units is like when your personal house needs a new washer and dryer, or it needs some plumbing work, or it needs to be painted, you can have the the vendor bill your LLC as if that work was done to your rental unit. And now that becomes a write-off for your, that helps avoid taxation on your income from the property. It's little things, not like big greedy things. Don't do a $10,000 roof and say that it was, a year rental or a $20,000 siding job. But even when you go to Home Depot, like literally anytime you go to Home Depot or Menards and you need to get household stuff, tools, all that stuff could be bought with the LLC's checking account. And then it just offsets the income you receive from there. And it's stuff you would have to buy anyway. So that's one of the little secrets to people, that one of the better ways to get ahead by owning rentals.
Yeah, so we do have an accountant that maybe we want to touch base with too, because just like you said, like Tony's business right now as an electrician, right, his contracting out, but we've been, there are certain things that you can claim, like the square footage of your office times how much of your electric bill and all those things. So that makes a lot of sense. Or his dad, right? Like a new washer and dryer. He said he needed work clothes. So
there's all those things. And for the big question for the accountant, what I would ask your accountant, is there a tax benefit to me putting the ownership of this property in an LLC post closing, knowing that I have it in your personal name currently for the loan? And if you do create the LLC, I can walk you through all that. Don't pay a lawyer to do that. It's super simple. It takes 5 minutes. And a lot of people go online and they pay like $1,000 or $500 to have LegalZoom or a local lawyer do their LLC. And it's a joke how easy it is. But once you get your LLC, you would also want to get an EIN, which is an employee ID number for the federal government. And then create an operating agreement, which I can give you a template for. If you have 2 people on the account, like you and Tony, as members of the LLC, any bank is going to want to see an operating agreement then. If you're just a sole member, which you can get away with when you're married, because it's automatically in Wisconsin marital property. So you could just put the LLC in your name or Tony's name, either one, and you're automatically both 50% owners. So looking back on the last one I started, I put April and I as members. And then when I went to the bank, they're like, oh, we need to see your operating agreement since you're a multi-member LLC. And I'm like, well, we're a husband and wife. And she's like, yeah, if there's more than one person on the LLC, you have to have an operating agreement. So then I had to download an operating agreement. I just filled it all out myself. I changed it to my pertinent information. But I have that I could share with you if you need to do that. And the operating agreement helps legitimize your LLC. Like I said, they always try to pierce the veil of your LLC and say that it's just a shell that doesn't really do anything, and you just got it for pseudo protection. And technically your LLC, I think, can't remember if it's LLC or S Corp or a C Corp, maybe all of them, you're supposed to hold annual meetings. You're supposed to have an operating agreement. And I think there might be 1 or 2 other things that kind of legitimize it like it's a real business, right? And that can be as simple as you and Tony sitting down and talking about your duplex or your triplex for a few minutes and then writing it down in the date and then putting that in a folder. That's your annual meeting. Okay. So I'm sorry I don't have a super clear answer for you. I think if you didn't want to do it in the LLC for this first one, I would just recommend, I would call your insurance person and say, I bought this rental unit. What's the best insurance coverage? And then run that by me with what their recommendations are.
Okay. Yeah, we have a meeting with our insurance that we've been using for everything else to see what the ad would be tonight. So
okay, cool. Yeah, that's good timing.
Yeah. Okay, that's helpful.
Your second question, what is the process for organization? I would prefer to use Google Drive. I'm not sure if that's safeguarded enough. I think Google Drive is just fine. I think that many people use that. I think you had a question maybe once before about collecting rent. Like what's the best way to collect rent or
Yeah.
a lot of people, I haven't used it yet. I just get paper checks from my duplex tenants and the same from all my commercial tenants. But there's a company called Cozy, and I think their website is cozy.co, C-O, so like COZY.co. And their service for landlords is free. And I've seen enough people on enough threads on Facebook and other places that swear by it, that even though I've not used it, I would recommend looking into that if you want to try to just start right off the bat with a system like that. And what it does is it creates an online portal that allows your tenants to pay. And that's nice. They can pay with their bank account, they can pay with a credit card. It just gives them more ways to pay, which gives them less ways to not pay you. And I think there is like a 4 to 7 day period before you get that in your bank account, but you can pay like $3 and get it, like next day if you really wanted it or needed it. So I would recommend looking into Cozy if you wanted to take online payments. I've heard of people using Venmo. I've heard of people using PayPal. It seems like there's issues with all of those in some fashion or another. So that's why I would go with the Cozy, or I would just have them mail you checks. Never accept cash, because then they can debate. There's a debate over whether or not they paid you, right? ACH, electronic transfer from their bank account automatically, is by far the best, and it just draws. So we always encourage all of our tenants to do ACH transfers for their bank account, because it doesn't cost you any fees, doesn't cost them any fees, and it just comes out automatically. So, and I think we might talk to UW Credit Union about getting an ACH form or template that you could share with your tenants. And sometimes you could even give them a discount. Say, hey, you sign up for this, we'll give you a 1% discount, or I don't know, whatever would seem worth it to you.
So is that like an automatic, like on the first of the month, it automatically pulls?
Yeah.
Assuming that's what the A stands for, maybe.
Automated. Yeah, I forget what ACH stands for. But we've offered it to all of our commercial tenants down in Stoughton, and not a single one has taken us up on it. They all like to sit down and write out a check by hand. So
I mean,
So
I don't
one
blame you.
thing-
That's how I did my mortgage.
yeah,
Check every month because you know exactly what's happening.
My
right.
bank,
Keep your pulse
I
on.
do UW Credit Union, and my landlord for my salon, I'm not even sure what bank he does. They couldn't connect on the automatic payments, so then UW automatically writes his bank a check. And so they like receive a check.
Oh,
So
okay.
it's still like me as a tenant, it's still automatic. I don't have to think about it. And then they are still receiving a check, but they are receiving a paper check. So.
Okay.
Sure, instead of a transfer. Okay.
Can I ask, is there a way to find out now how the tenants are currently paying each month to know, like, moving forward? I mean, I'm a little concerned with the April 30th closing date and May 1st, the next day being when rent is due. Like, how do we communicate and make that transfer like really quickly?
Sure. Chances are, Lisa, that they're all paying by check.
Okay.
I can ask the other agent to confirm that. I'll make a note about that quick.
And then, like, I'm assuming because like the 1st is when the check is due, like even if it's postmarked by the 1st, like that would be fine. But like we're gonna have to connect with the tenants on where they're sending that check.
Yeah.
To. I would think
Yes.
in advance, in advance
Yeah.
of the closing.
I'll ask if it's okay for you to send them a letter,
Yeah.
or just have the typically what would happen is the current owner would let them know, hey, there's a sale and it's
Mhm.
happening on this date, and you're gonna, moving forward, you're gonna pay your rent to here. We just give them that information to
Yeah.
share.
Okay.
Um, your next question was about budgets. I can give you some kind of ballpark percentages people use for budgets. If you Google it, there's a million rental unit budgets that they're all so unique that it's hard to say. You know, you got ones where the tenants are responsible for doing everything. You know, mowing, shoveling, they pay their own utilities, and you got ones like you're buying where you pay the utilities. That's all built into their rent. So repairs and maintenance is typically 10 to 15% of the rent. So, you know, if you're bringing in whatever your monthly or annual rent is, figure 10 to 15% of that is going to go back into repairs and maintenance. And the older your building is, the more renovations it needs. You know, I think I'd probably create a separate line item just for utilities for you, just so you know, and you can track them. And you can call and call the city of Columbus or Watertown, I'm sorry, and ask them who supplies the utilities to those addresses. And then I would call those companies, give them the 3 addresses, and ask them what the average bills are for, you know, water and sewer, electricity and gas, just so you can create your budget for those utilities. And then you got to factor in, you know, shoveling or plowing and mowing the lawn to that repairs and maintenance budget. And then typically you would figure in somewhere between 3 and 5% for vacancy. So that's, you know, if you have a tenant that leaves June 1st and you don't get it filled until August 15th or something, you know, there's always a chance you're going to have some vacancy. So you like to budget for that, right? Your insurance, you'll find out what that costs tonight, right? The property tax, you already can see on the listing what it is. Whether or not it'll go up depends on the municipality. Typically, your bigger municipalities that are better run, as soon as there's a sale, that assessor's at your house the next day and he's going through it and he's reassessing it, usually at the sale price. You know, I found out it looked like in Beaver Dam, for instance, that maybe that's not the case, and Watertown might be the same. They might just assess things every 10 years or whenever they get around to it. So, but you can do the math, right? On if you see the assessed value is 200,000 and the taxes are 2,000 and you pay 300,000, they're probably, you know, they're going to go up a commensurate amount, right? So utilities, we already talked about. You're not going to hire a property manager, but just for your knowledge, property management is anywhere from 5, 6 to up to 15%, depending on the location in the company. And then it's good to figure in like 2 to 4% a year for just miscellaneous travel, bookkeeping costs, if you're going to pay somebody to do any of that, legal fees that you may incur, like if you have to kick a tenant out or something. But 2 to 4% for those, and that's a pretty good start expense wise.
So do you have any, sorry.
Go ahead.
Do you have any, like, so do you, my vision is that I would have like a Google sheet for the whole property with like tabs maybe for each unit, or maybe it's like 4 Google sheets, one for each or each of the units and one for the whole property, you know, like broken down by month and maybe how they can talk to each other. Do you have any sort of like templates for that? Or is that like, how do you organize, like thinking about your duplex really would be like the best comparison?
Sure. You know, I don't have it that organized, unfortunately.
Okay.
What you're talking about is a great idea, but it can be pretty simple. And what I would do is create that sheet. I would have a column, the first column just be the month, like the date, like, January through December in the year. And then I would make a column for just thinking forward, like base rent, I would call it probably.
Yeah.
And then I would have another one for like miscellaneous expenses. I would have another one for their security deposit. And that's another thing. Open a separate bank account just to hold their security deposits in. You can put them all together, but just keep them in one account separate from the other account that you would put all your rent and pay all your expenses out of. Okay. What you want to do is just keep what they call a rent roll. Okay. So every month when their rent comes in, and maybe you have a column that's like rent due and then one that's rent paid in case for some reason you ever get somebody that's not paying the full amount. But you can say, all right, January, or let's just say May 1st, 2021, rent due $850, paid $850 on this date with check number, whatever. So as far as record keeping goes, that's about as extensive as you really need to get. If you ever go to sell that property, showing someone that extensive rent roll would be really helpful as the whole of the building. And if you want to break it down by unit, you can. I would keep a record of any expenses. So if you're like, oh, we repainted this entire apartment, we put new carpet in and it was X amount of money, I would keep those records too. Again, just for your own knowledge. But when you go, if you ever go to sell that thing, you can say, look at all the money we've put into this. We've updated all these things. We redid the electric, we put new windows upstairs, whatever it is. We put a new roof on and here's the date and here's even maybe a picture of a receipt. Those types of things.
May I interject?
You probably don't use. Yeah, go ahead.
So my accountant does an awesome spreadsheet for my business with itemized everything. And then she goes through the entire year. So kind of like what Tony was saying, having the months at the top, and then every single line is a different item. So that might be a great question for your CPA or your accountant. They might already have something like that established, and then you wouldn't have to go through all the work. Plus, then they would have everything kind of separated out for you so that when it comes time for taxes for this dwelling, then it's super easy for them to just put it into their computer for tax reasons. Sorry.
Yeah, good idea.
No, that makes
you're
a
good.
lot of sense. And our accountant actually gave us one for Tony's electrician business, and that's what we use too. And it's like, there's that one sheet that's like the whole year snapshot broken down by month. And then each tab is, like months. And so if he's got something, that would be great.
Yeah, I would ask your accountant, if you're gonna, if you end up doing this for a year and you like it so much, you want to go buy a couple more, I would make sure your accountant is very well versed in real estate. We had the hardest time finding someone that was, and I've found 2 people now that I would recommend for someone that's in the real estate business. The first one is Tim Moy from MBE accounting. They're actually out of Baraboo, but they've got an office in Sun Prairie and they've got half a dozen other offices throughout southern Wisconsin. But Tim is a very active real estate investor, and he's one of the partners of the company, one of the owners. And when I call him with a question, I trust 100% his answer on it, whereas I didn't have that in the past. In fact, that's who I would recommend. The other guy is good, but I would just go with Tim if I were anyone. And it might cost you a little more. What I've learned is that, if your typical accountant costs you like $500 or $1,000 to do your taxes, and you end up having to pay somebody that really knows what they're doing $5,000 to do your taxes, there's a good chance that person is saving you 20 or 30 or 40 or 50 grand because they actually know what they're doing. So it's a good trade-off, right? Like, I'm paying this guy double what I was used to paying, but he's saving me 10 times what I used to pay in taxes. So a lot of people don't realize that, or if they do, they realize it too late in life, and they've paid too much taxes for way too long. I do have a, I have a spreadsheet, but you would probably spend more time tweaking it. It's for our commercial building, and it's got all kinds of columns and things that you don't want or need for a 3-unit. So, but yeah, I would ask your accountant if they have that, and ask them if they have any clients that specialize in real estate investment, and ask them if they invest in real estate at all, because maybe your accountant already does that, and that'd be perfect. So your lease, you know, for my commercial building, I send an invoice every month because it's a little more complicated than just a monthly rent. They pay common area maintenance charges and taxes and insurance and all these other things. Per your lease, you know, whatever your lease says is what your tenants, you don't have to bill them. They should just send it to you, right? I'm just trying to think through logistically, like your first month. It should be pretty clean because it's on like pretty much the last day of the month. There shouldn't be like a bunch of prorated rent that they're going to have to pay you or whatever. But I'll work with the other side to make sure that everything is clean when you transfer it. And then it's really just a matter of getting them your name, who you want the check made out to, and where they should send it, right? And we'll try to get that to the tenants as far ahead of time as possible. And then you're going to want to get their contact information. You're going to want to get all the keys. We'll get that at closing. A lot of times the other side is pretty good about sharing anything like, hey, you're going to want to, you know, keep an eye out on this. You know, the one neighbor does this, or, you know, when you get that heavy rain, you get water right here, whatever. A lot of times at the closing tables when they're going to fill you in on a lot of that stuff. But really, as you sign new leases, I would look into making sure whatever lease you use, it has everything you want in it, right? Like if you're very concerned about late payments, if you're very concerned about pets, whatever those things are. You know, I follow this guy online that he's a real estate attorney, and he's always got these tips about what your lease should include. And the last one he had was talking about noise issues. He's like, you don't want to get calls at you and Tony and Lisa don't want to be getting calls at 1 a.m. saying, hey, my upstairs neighbor is too loud. Can you do something about it? So he's got verbiage in his lease stating that, like a procedure, like if your neighbor's being loud, you go and knock on their door and you ask them to be quieter. If that doesn't work, you call the police. You don't call me at 1 a.m. because there's literally next to nothing I can do about it, you know, from where I'm at. And so in order to just avoid that, you put that right in the lease, and you can, you know, point that out to them when they do make that call if they haven't read it properly. So there's a lot of little things like that, and I can direct you to that guy's page. I would also recommend listening to the Bigger Pockets podcast if you haven't. I'm trying to remember what that guy's name is.
David Green?
Oh, not for Bigger Pockets, this other guy, the attorney. I'll pass it along. I'll pass it along to both of you. Actually, I think he might be on TikTok or something like that. It's like a bald attorney guy. He's kind of intense, but he's got a lot of good information. Trying to think of what else you should need to know.
So I'm wondering, is there like a statewide template that's kind of like a baseline to use for rental properties? Because I noticed, right, like 2 of our 3 are actually like very thorough long leases.
Yeah.
Which
yeah,
I'm
I
glad
can actually
do
share. I can share ours with you
Okay.
from our duplex.
Yeah. So it's just interesting that 3rd unit is so short of a lease.
Yeah,
Doesn't
I think
mention
I
anything
think
about
that's
pets.
actually the state template. It's just like a 2-page doc.
Okay.
So a lot of people have an attorney draft one up that has, you know, more bases covered, if you will. but I'll send you a copy of ours. To be honest, I don't even remember how many pages ours is. I think it might be anywhere between 5 and 10 pages long. I don't even recall if we created it, if we stole it from someone. I've never had any issues with it, and so that's probably why I don't know about it, knock on wood. But basically, for the most part, if you do a really, really, really good job, and I would look up tenant screening services. I haven't had to do this because I've had the same tenants for years and years and years and years. So one guy I've had since I bought it 10 years ago, and the other one is my cousin, so I didn't need to run a check on him. But it might cost you 20 or 30 bucks a pop to run people through a filter. But if you put out an ad for a tenant and you get 10 applicants and 2 of them look pretty good to you, run those 2 through the background check software of your choice. And it's worth the 20 or 40 bucks to save you thousands of dollars in evicting someone later. You always want to be slow. It's like when you're hiring someone, you want to be slow to hire and quick to fire, right? Like you want to take your time on the front end because it's going to save you all the back end headaches. And so calling their references, calling other places they've lived, not just taking their word for it that they've lived in the same place for 3 years. Call their landlord and ask them questions about them. Take your time getting people in, because when you have good people there, it's like super easy. There's literally next to nothing to do. I forget that our duplex exists sometimes. It's 5 miles from my house, and I've gone more than a year without even driving past it. So that tells you anything. That's not the case for everybody, but a lot of people have this fear that it's just constant work. And you guys are young enough and handy enough that it's going to be pretty easy to keep it maintained. So I guess going back, I wish I had a better answer for you on the LLC thing. I think if you're going to buy a bunch of them, you're going to want to go the commercial lending route, and you're going to want to have them in an LLC right from the jump. That's probably the easiest way to do it and be protected, and then making sure that your LLC is legit, so it doesn't get pierced. But then making sure with your insurance person that you're good to go as far as liability coverage.
Okay, sounds good. I took a lot of notes, 3 pages.
Oh, good. Becca, do you have any other thoughts?
No, I don't have any other thoughts or questions.
Okay, well, if anything else comes up, Lisa, don't hesitate to call, text, message, email, whatever's easiest for you. Geez, I got a call coming in from Adamsville, Ohio. I don't even know where that is. So I will work on with the listing agent about figuring out how the current tenants are paying, and then also work to ensure a smooth transition, and then see if we can get them, maybe you guys can craft a letter introducing yourselves, and we can have them pass it along, like maybe a week or so prior to closing.
Okay.
I will send you our leases, and I'll try to find that guy on Facebook or TikTok or wherever he is that talks about all the lease tips that he includes. I think that's all I've got on my list here. So unless you got anything else, I think we're good to go for now.
Yeah, I don't have anything right now, but I know that I will. So,
Okay.
at some point here.
Yeah, if the questions are going to come up, and I might not have every answer for you, but I'll definitely know where to look for it. So I'll send the stuff that I have for you right now as soon as we hang up here, and we can go from there. Okay.
Awesome. Sounds great.
Cool. All right,
Thanks
ladies,
for your
have a good
time
day.
this morning. Yeah, you too. Nice to meet you, Becca.
Nice to meet you. Bye, guys.
Bye.
Bye-bye.